The courtroom confrontation. Judge Harrison Webb adjusted his ceremonial collar as the synthetic air filtration system hummed quietly overhead. From his elevated bench in courtroom Alpha 7, he surveyed the gleaming chamber with the practiced scrutiny of a man who had sentenced defendants from 17 different species across the galaxy. The Terran judicial complex orbiting Earth at 30,000 kilometers was humanity's pride, a monument to their rapid ascension in galactic politics. Webb prided himself on efficiency. In 15 years serving on the interstellar bench, he had earned the nickname Swift Justice among the human colonies and a less flattering moniker among alien diplomats, the Human Wall. His reputation for upholding Earth-centric interpretations of galactic law was unmatched. Today's docket appeared routine. 6 cases of interspecies trade violations, 2 diplomatic immunity disputes, and 1 unauthorized breach of a restricted diplomatic zone. Next case, Webb announced, his voice amplified perfectly through the chamber's acoustic system. Docket number 7329X, Earth Central Authority versus Okafor, Imani. The entrance portal dilated with a soft hiss. 2 enforcement officers escorted a woman into the courtroom. Her restraints, standard protocol for all defendants, emitted a soft blue glow against her dark skin. What struck Webb immediately was her posture, straight-backed and confident, eyes forward, no hint of the trepidation that typically accompanied appearances before his bench. The court AI projected the charges in holographic text before him. Defendant Okafor, Imani. Charges: unauthorized entry into the Galactic Council diplomatic compound during critical phase IA peace negotiations between the Arcturus Coalition and Earth Central Authority. Secondary charges of interfering with secure communications and refusing compliance with security directives. Webb studied the woman. Mid-30s, he estimated, with close-cropped hair and intelligent eyes that met his gaze without wavering. Her simple gray jumpsuit bore no insignia or identification. Defendant Okafor. These are serious charges. The Arcturus peace negotiations represent humanity's first opportunity for a strategic alliance with a Tier 1 galactic civilization. Your unauthorized presence jeopardized years of diplomatic work. How do you plead? Not guilty, Your Honor, she replied, her voice clear and measured. Webb's eyebrow arched slightly. The evidence package was comprehensive. Security footage showed her bypassing 3 checkpoints using falsified credentials, accessing communication terminals in the Arcturian delegation's private chambers, and physically resisting arrest when security personnel intervened. The evidence appears quite conclusive, Ms. Okafor. Perhaps you'd care to explain yourself before I pass judgment. Webb's tone conveyed that he expected little of value from her explanation. I would, Your Honor, but my explanation requires security clearance beyond this public forum. Webb felt a flash of irritation. After 15 years, he had heard every conceivable excuse. This court has full jurisdiction over all civilian infractions within Earth Central Authority territory. Your attempt to evade consequences is noted but irrelevant. I'm not evading consequences, Your Honor, she replied with the same calm demeanor. I'm merely stating that there are factors in this case that don't appear in your file. Webb leaned forward. Ms. Okafor, I've heard every excuse imaginable in my time on this bench. Earth has strict diplomatic protocols for a reason. Our standing in the Galactic Council hangs by a thread. We are still newcomers, and the older species watch our every move for signs that humans aren't ready for the responsibilities of galactic citizenship. Your actions risked an interstellar incident. With respect, Your Honor. Save it, Webb interrupted. The law is clear. For unauthorized entry into a Level 5 diplomatic zone during critical negotiations, this court imposes a fine of 75,000 credits and 3 months of restricted movement. For interference with diplomatic communications, an additional 50,000 credits. The woman remained composed. Judge Webb, before you continue, I believe you should check Security Protocol Omega-7 Tau. Webb paused. Omega-7 Tau was not a standard security code, but a high-level diplomatic verification protocol, known only to senior Earth officials. His neural implant automatically sent a verification request through secure channels. The response came instantly, flashing across his retinal display. Sci-Fi verification confirmed sub GGCT OKAFO IMANI position CHIF TJ advisor Earth diplomatic horrors C ultraviolet alpha orient assignment classified C XXEEDs GUDICALQUERI TARAMETEORS. Webb maintained his neutral expression with effort, though his mind raced. Ultraviolet alpha clearance exceeded his own by several tiers. The woman standing before him wasn't some reckless civilian. She was one of Earth's most senior diplomatic operatives. "I see," he said carefully. "This court will recess for 20 minutes while I review additional information." In his private chambers, Webb accessed Okafor's newly available file. Most sections were heavily redacted, but what remained painted a remarkable picture. Diplomatic missions to 27 alien worlds, 11 commendations for crisis resolution, fluency in 19 non-human languages, and personal involvement in negotiating 5 interstellar treaties. Her specialization was listed as threat assessment and countermeasure implementation. When court resumed, Webb addressed her with carefully measured words. "Ms. Okafor, this court acknowledges your position. However, proper protocols exist for diplomatic operations. Why weren't they followed?" "They were compromised, Your Honor," she replied. "For the past 6 weeks, standard diplomatic channels have been monitored. Someone has been intercepting classified communications between Earth Central and the Arcturian delegation." Webb frowned. "That should have been reported through secure channels." "It was," Okafor countered. "Twice. Each report disappeared. Each investigation quietly closed. I needed to access the Arcturian communication node directly because their quantum technology is resistant to the interception methods being used." The courtroom security alert suddenly flashed red. The AI's voice cut through the air. "Security breach detected. Multiple unauthorized entities in sectors 2 and 5. Webb's neural implant fed him security footage. 6 humanoid figures with distinctly non-human features had entered the judicial complex. Their chitinous exoskeletons and elongated limbs identified them as Arcturian diplomatic security, elite warriors rarely seen outside their ambassador's protective detail. "This courtroom is now locked down," Webb announced, activating emergency protocols. The transparent walls turned opaque as reinforced security barriers engage. "That won't stop them," Okafor said urgently. "Judge, those aren't ordinary security forces. They're here because someone has been feeding the Arcturian High Command falsified communications, supposedly from Earth's diplomatic corps. These communications suggest Earth is planning to betray the peace agreement and establish military outposts in disputed territories." "Impossible," Webb said. "That would contradict all of Earth's strategic interests." "Exactly," Okafor replied, "which is why I needed to access their communication node, to find evidence of who's manipulating both sides. The peace talks are 3 days from completion, and someone wants them to fail." Webb quickly assessed his options. Protocol demanded he remain with the secure court database until Central Authority security forces arrived. But if Okafor was right, those forces might not arrive in time, or worse, might be compromised. "System override," he commanded. "Authorization Webb Alpha 39. A hidden panel in the wall slid open, revealing an emergency exit route. "You're violating protocol, Your Honor," Okafor observed with the hint of a smile. "So I am," Webb conceded. "Consider your fines suspended pending further review. Now, I suggest we move quickly if you want to prevent an interstellar incident." As if in response, a massive impact shook the courtroom door, the reinforced metal buckling inward. "They've disabled the building's primary security grid," Okafor said. consulting a small device she extracted from her sleeve. Apparently the restraints hadn't been functioning properly. The Arcturians believe I've stolen classified military plans. They won't stop until they've recovered what they believe I took. And did you take something? Webb asked, following her into the emergency passage. Yes, she replied as the passage sealed behind them. The truth. I discovered who's been manipulating both sides, and it's neither human nor Arcturian. Another impact resonated through the walls, closer this time. The Arcturians were tracking them. Central Authority needs to know, Webb said. Central Authority may be compromised, Okafor countered. That's why I came alone. I needed irrefutable evidence before making accusations. Webb stopped abruptly. Ms. Okafor, I spent 15 years upholding the law. If you're suggesting conspiracy at the highest levels of Earth government, not conspiracy, Your Honor. Infiltration. She produced a small holographic projector. 3 months ago, we detected quantum communications using technology beyond anything known to Earth or Arcturian science. We traced them to sources within both diplomatic corps. Someone wants this alliance to fail, and they've positioned agents to ensure it does. The holographic display showed quantum signature patterns Webb didn't recognize, alongside security footage of high-ranking Earth officials entering restricted areas during unusual hours. Who are they? Webb asked, his judicial certainty shaken for the first time in years. We don't know yet, Okafor admitted, but they're sophisticated enough to manipulate communications at quantum levels, and they've been doing it for months. The peace talks are just the beginning. If Earth and Arcturus go to war, the galactic power balance shifts dramatically. A loud crash echoed through the passage. The Arcturians had breached the emergency exit. We have two options, Okafor said calmly. Continue running until they catch us, or confront them with the truth. Either way, I need a neutral arbiter, someone the Arcturians might trust despite their suspicions. A judge, Webb realized. Precisely. Your reputation for Earth-centric rulings actually helps us. If even the human wall acknowledges the evidence of third-party manipulation. Webb straightened his judicial collar. 15 years on the bench had taught him to recognize truth, and Okafor's eyes held it. Very well. Let's make our case. As the sound of Arcturian security forces grew louder, Judge Harrison Webb prepared to face a trial of his own. One where his prejudices and preconceptions would be judged alongside the evidence. The fate of two civilizations now rested not on his authority, but on his willingness to listen to the woman he had so quickly dismissed. Galactic consequences. The Arcturian security team moved with unsettling fluidity through the narrow passage, chitinous exoskeletons gleaming under the emergency lights. Judge Webb stood his ground beside Amani Okafor, his judicial robes a stark contrast to her practical attire. The lead Arcturian, taller than the others with ceremonial markings etched into his carapace, raised a multi-jointed limb that terminated in what appeared to be both a translation device and a weapon. Earth Judge, the translation device rendered in a metallic approximation of human speech. You harbor a thief of state secrets. Surrender the human female for Arcturian justice. Webb stepped forward, consciously adopting the formal posture used in Galactic Council proceedings. I am Judicial Authority Harrison Webb of Earth Central Authority. I invoke Statute 47 of the Preliminary Accord, right of neutral arbitration in matters of cross-species judicial dispute. The Arcturian security leader's compound eyes shifted, focusing and refocusing, their species equivalent of surprise. The invocation of Statute 47 was rare, especially from humans who typically preferred their own judicial system. This matter exceeds arbitration parameters, the Arcturian countered. The female has accessed restricted military communications, which is precisely why neutral examination of evidence is required, Webb replied. Strategic advisor Okafor has uncovered evidence of third-party manipulation of both Earth and Arcturian diplomatic communications. The Arcturians' antennae twitched, a sign of either disbelief or consideration. Webb couldn't be certain. His knowledge of Arcturian physiology was limited to what all judges learned during basic diplomatic training. "Prove your claim," the Arcturian demanded. Okafor stepped forward slowly, hands visible. "Commander, I request secure communication with Ambassador Krathax using diplomatic channel Theta 7. The security leader's posture shifted slightly. Theta 7 was a highly classified Arcturian emergency channel. Knowledge of its existence suggested Okafor's credentials were genuine. "Granted," the Arcturian replied after a tense moment. "But attempted deception will result in immediate execution." "Understood," Okafor said calmly. The security leader extended a communication device that unfolded into a holographic projector. After a series of complex authentication procedures, the imposing figure of Ambassador Krathax materialized in the narrow corridor. "Explain this interruption," the ambassador demanded, his translator rendering his clicks and chirps into curt, precise English. Webb stepped forward. "Ambassador, I am Judge Harrison Webb of the Terran Judicial Authority. I've invoked Statute 47 regarding Strategic Advisor Okafor. She has evidence that both our peoples are being manipulated by an unknown third party." The ambassador's compound eyes focused on Okafor. "You were detected accessing restricted Arcturian communications. Explain." "Ambassador," Okafor responded, 3 months ago, we detected quantum communications using technology beyond anything known to Earth or Arcturian science. These communications contained falsified orders and diplomatic positions from both sides. Someone is attempting to sabotage our peace negotiations. She activated her own device, projecting a series of quantum signatures and transmission logs. These are the authentic communications from Earth Central Authority regarding the disputed territories. They do not match what your delegation received. The ambassador studied the data, his exoskeleton clicking softly as he processed the information. "These discrepancies are concerning. However, they do not explain your unauthorized intrusion into our diplomatic compound. I needed to access your quantum relay directly," Okafor explained. "Our standard channels were compromised. I had to verify that your original communications were also being intercepted and altered before reaching Earth." The ambassador's antennae twitched rapidly. "And were they?" "Yes," Okafor replied, forwarding additional data. "The same quantum signature appears in both sets of intercepted communications. Neither human nor Arcturian technology can generate these patterns." A long silence followed as the ambassador consulted with unseen advisors off-screen. Webb used the moment to assess their situation. The security team remained poised for action, but their aggressive posture had subtly relaxed. They were waiting for their ambassador's decision. "Judge Webb," the ambassador finally said, "you invoked Statute 47. Are you prepared to serve as neutral arbiter in this matter, examining all evidence without human bias?" Webb understood the significance of the question. His reputation as the human wall was well known. The ambassador was testing whether he could set aside his Earth-centric views in service of a greater truth. "I am prepared to follow evidence wherever it leads, Ambassador," Webb replied formally. "Truth transcends species boundaries." The ambassador's translator rendered what might have been an Arcturian expression of skepticism, bold words from one called the human wall. "Nevertheless, we will proceed under Statute 47 protocols. Diplomatic security will escort you and Strategic Advisor Okafor to neutral territory on orbital platform Gamma, where evidence can be properly examined." The communication ended, and the security leader gestured toward the exit. "Follow. Any deviation will be considered hostile action." As they moved through the judicial complex under Arcturian escort, Webb spoke quietly to Okafor. "You seem remarkably calm for someone who was nearly executed by an alien security team." "This isn't my first diplomatic crisis, Judge," she replied with a slight smile. "Though usually I'm not wearing restraints when I resolve them." "About that," Webb said, "I may have been precipitous in my judgment." "You mean you made assumptions based on appearance and rushed to conclusions?" "Yes, you were." Her tone was matter-of-fact rather than accusatory. Webb felt a rare flush of embarrassment. I've spent 15 years ensuring human interests are protected in an increasingly complex galactic legal system. Perhaps that has narrowed my perspective. That's a diplomatic way of acknowledging bias, Okafor observed. But right now, human interests and Arcturian interests align perfectly. Neither of us wants war. Except whoever is manipulating our communications, Webb noted. Exactly, Okafor agreed. The question is, who benefits from conflict between Earth and Arcturus? The orbital platform Gamma hung in space between Earth and lunar orbit, neutral territory by interstellar treaty, administered by a coalition of non-aligned species. Its modular architecture reflected the diverse needs of dozens of species who used it for diplomatic meetings, cultural exchanges, and neutral arbitration. The Arcturians escorted them to a secure conference chamber designed for sensitive diplomatic negotiations. Ambassador Krathax awaited them, accompanied by 2 advisors whose elaborate exoskeleton decorations marked them as senior members of the Arcturian diplomatic corps. Judge Webb, the ambassador acknowledged. Strategic Advisor Okafor, we have reviewed your preliminary evidence and find it troubling. Our own security specialists confirm the quantum signatures do not match known technologies. Okafor nodded. Ambassador, I believe we should pool our intelligence resources. The pattern of manipulation suggests whoever is behind this has extensive knowledge of both our communication systems. Agreed, the ambassador said. But first, a demonstration of good faith is required. Judge Webb, as neutral arbiter, will you examine the complete evidence from both sides and render a preliminary finding? Webb understood the significance of this request. The ambassador was offering a diplomatic compromise, a face-saving measure that would allow both sides to step back from accusations without appearing weak. I will, Webb replied formally. For the next several hours, Webb reviewed the evidence presented by both Earth and Arcturian intelligence services. The pattern became clear. Someone had been systematically altering diplomatic communications for months, gradually escalating tensions by presenting each side with increasingly provocative statements, supposedly from the other. Without Okafor's intervention, the peace talks would have collapsed within days. I have reached a preliminary conclusion, Webb announced finally. The evidence clearly establishes that both Earth and Arcturian diplomatic channels have been compromised by an unknown third party using advanced quantum technology. Neither government appears responsible for the deliberate manipulation of communications. The ambassador's antennae twitched in what Webb had come to recognize as thoughtful consideration. This finding is acceptable. The question remains, who is responsible? Okafor stepped forward. With your permission, Ambassador, I would like to present a theory based on combined intelligence analysis. Proceed, the ambassador agreed. Okafor activated a holographic display showing a star map of the local galactic sector. Earth and Arcturus occupy strategically significant positions along the Perseus Arm trade routes. Our alliance would create a stable economic zone spanning 17 systems. This is known, the ambassador said. What's less known, Okafor continued, is that the Trilaxian consortium has been quietly expanding their influence in the neighboring Cygnus Gap. Their mining operations have depleted resources in their home systems, and they're seeking new territories. Webb studied the map with growing understanding. And a human-Arcturian alliance would create a unified front that could resist Trilaxian expansion. Precisely, Okafor confirmed. But a conflict between our species would leave both weakened, creating opportunities for Trilaxian acquisition of disputed territories. The ambassador's advisors chittered rapidly in their native language, clearly agitated by this analysis. The ambassador himself remained still, compound eyes fixed on the holographic display. The consortium has no formal status in the Galactic Council, the ambassador noted. How would they acquire such advanced technology? They wouldn't need to develop it themselves, Okafor explained. The quantum signature matches experimental technology stolen from the Praxis Research Collective 3 standard years ago. The Trilaxians could have purchased it through intermediaries. Webb watched the ambassador process this information. His judicial instincts told him they were approaching a critical moment. The evidence against the Trilaxians was circumstantial, compelling but not conclusive. How the ambassador responded would determine whether this crisis escalated or resolved. "What do you propose, strategic advisor?" the ambassador asked finally. "A joint operation," Okafor replied without hesitation. "Earth and Arcturian intelligence services working together to confirm Trilaxian involvement and present evidence to the Galactic Council. Simultaneously, we proceed with our peace negotiations under enhanced security protocols." Webb recognized the elegant diplomacy of Okafor's proposal. It acknowledged the threat without making accusations that couldn't yet be proven, while creating a framework for cooperation that would strengthen Earth-Arcturian relations. "And you, Earth Judge." The ambassador turned to Webb. "What is your recommendation as neutral arbiter?" Webb considered carefully. His legal training demanded conclusive evidence before rendering judgment, but his experience told him that waiting for perfect proof could allow further damage to occur. "As arbiter, I recommend provisional acceptance of strategic advisor Okafor's analysis and proposed course of action, pending final verification of Trilaxian involvement," Webb said formally. "Furthermore, I recommend that strategic advisor Okafor's unauthorized actions be recognized as necessary emergency measures taken to preserve peace between our peoples." The ambassador was silent for a long moment. "Your recommendation is unexpected from one with your reputation, Judge Webb. Perhaps humans are more adaptable than our cultural analysts have suggested." Webb inclined his head slightly. "We are capable of growth, Ambassador. Even those of us who have spent years building walls." "Then we are in agreement," the ambassador declared. "The joint operation will proceed immediately. All charges against strategic advisor Okafor are withdrawn in recognition of her service to interspecies peace." The Arcturian security team deactivated Okafor's restraints with a gesture. As the formal proceedings concluded and the various officials dispersed to implement the agreement, Webb found himself alone with Okafor in the neutral chamber. "That was quite a performance, Judge," she said with a slight smile. "I wasn't sure you could set aside 15 years of Earth-first jurisprudence so quickly." Webb straightened his judicial collar. "I have always followed evidence, strategic advisor. Perhaps I haven't always looked for it in the right places." "Well, your reputation for stubbornness actually helped us today," Okafor observed. "The Arcturians would have been suspicious if anyone else had arbitrated this dispute." "And your reputation?" Webb asked. "I admit I'm curious how Earth's most senior diplomatic strategist ended up in my courtroom wearing restraints." Okafor's expression grew serious. "Sometimes the most effective diplomacy happens outside official channels, Judge Webb. The formal system is necessary, but occasionally, when lives and peace are at stake, someone needs to break protocol to preserve what the protocol was designed to protect." Webb considered her words. "A philosophy that would be dangerous in less principled hands. Which is why I surrendered myself to proper judicial authority once I had the evidence," she replied. "I believe in the system, Judge Webb. I just recognize its limitations." Webb nodded slowly. "As should we all. I've spent 15 years applying laws without always considering their deeper purpose. It's never too late to broaden one's perspective," Okafor said. "Though I must admit, I didn't expect the human wall to be the one who helped prevent an interstellar incident. Perhaps it's time for a new nickname," Webb suggested with the hint of a smile. Okafor laughed. "I'm afraid you'll have to earn that one, Judge. One case of enlightened jurisprudence doesn't erase 15 years of precedent." "Then I shall have to continue my education," Webb replied, "perhaps beginning with a more thorough understanding of Earth's diplomatic strategies. After all, one never knows when another diplomatic crisis might end up in my courtroom." "A wise precaution," Okafor agreed. "Though next time, perhaps skip the fines and restraints." As they prepared to return to Earth, Webb reflected on how quickly his carefully ordered worldview had been upended. He had spent his career building a reputation as an immovable defender of human interests, only to discover that true justice required flexibility and a willingness to look beyond appearances and assumptions. The peace talks between Earth and Arcturus would continue, stronger for having weathered this attempt at sabotage. And Judge Harrison Webb, once known as the Human Wall, would return to his bench with a deeper understanding of the complex galaxy humanity had joined, and the equally complex humans who served it in ways he had never imagined.